The hallways of St. Jude's Academy didn't just smell like floor wax and old books. They smelled like money. It was the kind of school where the parking lot looked like a luxury car dealership, and the students spent their spring breaks in places most people only saw on postcards. For Lily, it was a world she lived in, but didn't quite belong to. She was a scholarship kid, a label that felt like a neon sign flashing over her head every time she walked into a classroom. Lily was quiet. She was the type of girl who sat in the middle row, took meticulous notes, and never raised her hand unless she was directly called upon. Her clothes were clean but faded, and her shoes were the same pair she'd worn for 2 years straight. She didn't mind the silence. In fact, she preferred it. It was safer to be invisible in a place like this. The trouble started on a Tuesday morning during the Heritage and Legacy Seminar. It was a week-long event designed to let students connect with their roots, which was really just a polite way for the wealthiest kids to brag about their family's power. The teacher, Mr. Henderson, stood at the front of the room with a wide, expectant smile. Now, class, legacy isn't just about the past. It's about the standard we are held to today. Who would like to go next? A girl named Chloe stood up before the teacher even finished his sentence. Chloe was the undisputed son of the school's social solar system. Everything and everyone revolved around her. Her father owned a global shipping empire, and she made sure everyone knew it. My father just closed a deal in Singapore that will provide 5,000 jobs, Chloe said, tossing her perfectly curled hair over her shoulder. He says that leadership is in our blood. It's not just what we do, it's who we are. The class clapped. Mr. Henderson beamed. Wonderful, Chloe. Real-world impact. And what about you, Lily? We haven't heard much from you this week. The room went quiet. Lily felt 20 pairs of eyes lock onto her. She hated this. She hated the way Chloe leaned back in her chair, a small, mocking smirk playing on her lips, waiting for Lily to say something unimpressive. Lily cleared her throat. Her voice was small but steady. My family legacy is a bit different. My mom, she isn't a CEO, she's in the military. Oh, how sweet, Chloe interrupted, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. My uncle was in the army. He did the paperwork for a motor pool in Ohio. It's very brave to work a desk for the government. A few kids snickered. Lily felt a hot prickle of annoyance rise up her neck. Usually, she would just let it slide. She would go back to her notebook and let Chloe win. But she had spent the morning looking at a blurry photo of her mother tucked inside her locker, a photo taken in the middle of a desert where her mother looked tired, covered in dust, but stronger than anyone Lily had ever met. She doesn't work at a desk, Lily said, her voice a fraction louder. She's a Navy SEAL. The silence that followed wasn't the respectful kind. It was the kind of silence that happens right before a thunderstorm. Then, it broke. Chloe let out a laugh so sharp it sounded like glass breaking. A Navy SEAL? Lily, do you even know what that is? They're the most elite soldiers in the world. They're basically ghosts, and they're almost all men. There are women now, Lily countered, her heart hammering against her ribs. It's rare, but it's real. My mom passed the training 3 years ago. She's part of a specialized unit. Right, Chloe said, standing up and walking toward Lily's desk. She leaned down, whispering loud enough for the whole row to hear. And my cat is a fighter pilot. Honestly, Lily, we know you're desperate to fit in, but this is pathetic. Your mom's probably a cook or a mechanic at some base, and you're making up stories to feel important. I'm not lying, Lily whispered. Then prove it, Chloe challenged. Bring her to the Veterans Gala this Friday. It's the biggest event of the semester. All the important parents will be there. If she's such a hero, let's see the uniform. Let's see the medals. Lily looked down at her desk. She's deployed. I don't know if she'll be back in time. The classroom erupted in another round of laughter. Mr. Henderson tried to regain control, but the damage was done. To the rest of the school, Lily wasn't just the poor girl anymore. She was the girl who told the big lie. As the bell rang, Lily hurried out of the room, her books pressed tight to her chest. She could hear the whispers trailing behind her. "G.I. Lily," someone called out. "Hey, Lily, did your mom capture any aliens today?" She ducked into the library, finding a corner hidden behind a stack of encyclopedias. She pulled out her phone. There were no new messages. The last time she'd spoken to her mom was 3 weeks ago, a grainy video call that lasted only 2 minutes. Her mom had looked exhausted, her hair pulled back tight. Her eyes scanned the area behind the camera even while she blew Lily a kiss. "Stay focused, kiddo," her mom had said. "Integrity above all else. Remember what I told you." "I remember, Mom," Lily had whispered. "The truth doesn't need a loud voice to be real." But sitting in the library of St. Jude's, surrounded by people who used words like weapons, Lily felt like the truth was drowning. She hadn't said it to brag. She had said it because she was proud. She was proud of the woman who missed birthdays and holidays to protect people who would never even know her name. By lunch, the story had grown. People were saying Lily claimed her mom had won the Medal of Honor, that she'd rescued the president, that she was a secret agent. Each version made Lily look more ridiculous. She sat at a lone table in the back of the cafeteria, picking at a sandwich. Chloe and her friends walked past, purposefully bumping into the table so Lily's water bottle tipped over. "Better clean that up, sailor," Chloe mocked. "Unless you want to call for backup. Unless you want to call for backup." Lily wiped the water off the table with a paper towel, her hand shaking slightly. She didn't look up. She didn't fight back. She just kept thinking about that photo in her locker. Her mother always said that the loudest person in the room was usually the weakest, and the quietest person was usually the one you had to worry about. As the school day ended, Lily walked to the bus stop. The Veterans Gala was only 3 days away. It was a formal event where the school honored families with military history. It was supposed to be a night of pride, but for Lily, it felt like a countdown to an execution. She knew her mom was supposed to be home soon, but soon in the military could mean tomorrow or 6 months from now. If her mom didn't show up, Chloe would never let her live it down. She would be the girl who lied about her mother's service for the rest of her high school life. Lily got on the bus and stared out the window. She watched the expensive houses blur into a smear of green and gray. She felt a heavy weight in her chest, a mix of loneliness and a tiny flickering spark of hope. She knew the truth. She knew who her mother was. But in a world that only cared about what it could see, Lily wondered if the truth was going to be enough to save her. She pulled out a small silver coin from her pocket. It was a challenge coin given to her by her mother before her last deployment. On one side was an anchor and a trident. On the other, the words, "Never quit." Lily squeezed the coin until the metal bit into her palm. She wasn't going to take back what she said. She wasn't going to apologize. She would show up to that gala, even if she had to stand there alone. The next morning, the atmosphere at school had shifted from casual teasing to something much heavier. News of Lily's claim had spread through the hallways like a wildfire, fueled by high-speed internet and boredom. Everywhere she went, the air seemed to hum with giggles and muffled comments. It was no longer just Chloe and her inner circle. Now, even the kids Lily had never spoken to were looking at her with a mix of pity and amusement. When Lily walked into her first period history class, she found a crudely drawn stick figure on the chalkboard. It was wearing a tutu and holding a giant machine gun with a speech bubble that read, "My mommy is a super soldier." The class roared with laughter. Lily felt the blood rush to her face, a heat that started at her chest and climbed to her ears. She sat down, focused on the grain of the wooden desk, and took a deep breath. She didn't erase the drawing, she just waited for the teacher to arrive. "Mr. Jock." Henderson walked in and quickly wiped the board, looking slightly uncomfortable. He didn't address the drawing, and he didn't look Lily in the eye. That was almost worse than the mockery. The adults were starting to treat her like she was broken, like she was a kid who had made up a story because she was lonely, and they were all too polite to call her out on it. At lunch, Lily tried to find a quiet corner in the library, but the librarian told her the back section was closed for inventory. Forced back into the main courtyard, she found herself cornered by Chloe and a group of boys from the varsity soccer team. "Hey, Lily!" one of the boys shouted, grinning as he tossed a soccer ball between his hands. "I was thinking of joining the SEALs this weekend. Do you think your mom could get me a signed autograph? Or maybe she can teach me how to breathe underwater." "Leave her alone, Justin," Chloe said. Though her tone wasn't defensive, it was mocking. "She's probably busy coordinating a drone strike from her bedroom." "Isn't that right, Lily?" Lily kept walking, but Chloe stepped in front of her, blocking the path. "You know, the gala is only 48 hours away. My parents bought a whole table. My dad is donating $10,000 to the Veterans Scholarship Fund. He's very excited to meet this warrior mom of yours. He says he's never met a female SEAL before. In fact, he looked it up, and he says the numbers are so small it's almost impossible that one would be living in our little zip code." "My mom doesn't do it for the numbers," Lily said, her voice trembling just enough for Chloe to notice. "She does it because it's her job." "Sure," Chloe whispered, leaning in close. "But here's the thing, Lily. If you show up Friday night and she's not there, I'm going to make sure everyone knows you're a fraud. I'll make sure the school board hears about how you're using the military to get attention. My dad says that's stolen valor. It's a big deal." That word, stolen valor, felt like a physical blow. Lily knew what that meant. It was the worst thing you could say about someone in a military family. It meant taking honor you hadn't earned. The irony was so thick it was hard to breathe. Lily was being accused of lying about the very thing that made her life so difficult. She was the one who spent her birthdays waiting by a silent phone. She was the one who had to learn how to fix the kitchen sink because her mom was thousands of miles away in a place she couldn't even name on a map. When Lily got home that afternoon, the house felt cavernous. Her aunt, who stayed with her during the long deployments, was working a double shift at the hospital. Lily went into the kitchen and saw a stack of mail on the counter. Among the bills was a small, olive-drab envelope with no return address. Her heart skipped a beat. She tore it open. Inside was a single piece of paper with a handwritten note. "Training went long. The weather is rough where we are. I'm trying, kiddo. I'm trying so hard to get back for your big night. Hold the line. Love, Mom." It wasn't a promise. It was a maybe. In the world of special operations, a maybe. In the world of special operations, a maybe was often as good as a no. Missions changed. Helicopters broke down, and the world didn't stop turning just because a daughter needed her mom at a school dance. Lily sat at the kitchen table and cried. She didn't cry because of Chloe or the drawing on the chalkboard. She cried because she missed her mom so much it felt like a dull ache in her bones. She missed the smell of her mom's laundry detergent and the way she would tell stories about the stars in the desert. She felt like she was standing on a tiny island, and the tide was coming in from all sides. Thursday was a blur of whispers. The G.I. Lily nickname had evolved. Now, kids were asking her for tactical advice on how to pass their math tests. A group of seniors even followed her to the bus stop, humming a military march. Lily just put her headphones in and turned the volume up until the music drowned out the world. That night, Lily pulled her dress out of the closet. It was a simple navy blue dress they'd bought on sale months ago. She polished her mother's challenge coin with a soft cloth. She made a decision. She wasn't going to hide. Even if her mom didn't make it, Lily would go to the gala. She would sit at their assigned table, and she would tell the truth. Even if no one believed her, she would hold the line just like the letter said. She tried to call the satellite number her mom had left for emergencies, but it went straight to a recorded message saying the line was restricted. Lily hung up and stared at her reflection in the mirror. She looked tired. She looked like a girl who was carrying a secret that was too heavy for her. "I know you're real," she whispered to the empty room. "I know what you do." The pressure was building to a breaking point. The school was decorated with flags and banners. The local newspaper had even sent a photographer to cover the event. It was supposed to be a night of honor, but as Lily went to sleep that night, it felt like she was preparing for a battle she was destined to lose. As Friday morning arrived, Lily woke up to a gray, rainy sky. The weather was perfect for a mood of gloom. At school, Chloe was already wearing a corsage, acting like the hostess of the entire event. "Tonight's the night, Lily," Chloe called out across the parking lot. "I hope your mom's parachute doesn't get stuck in a tree on the way here." Lily didn't answer. She just walked into the school, her head held high, counting the hours until the sun went down. She had no idea that while she was sitting in her morning English class, a transport plane was touching down at a private airfield 50 miles away, and a group of exhausted, mud-stained soldiers were stepping onto the tarmac with one goal in mind: making it home. The rain didn't stop. By the time evening rolled around, the sky had turned a bruised shade of purple, and the wind was whipping the trees outside the school's grand ballroom. Inside, the atmosphere was the exact opposite. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume, floral arrangements, and catered steak. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm, golden glow over the polished hardwood floors. Lily stood in front of the full-length mirror in her hallway. The navy blue dress fit her well, but she felt small in it. She had tied her hair back in a neat, tight bun, just like her mom used to do before a long shift. She didn't have any jewelry, so she tucked the silver challenge coin into a small hidden pocket in her dress. It felt like a heavy weight against her hip, a reminder of a promise she wasn't sure could be kept. "You look beautiful, Lily," her aunt said, leaning against the doorframe. Her aunt's face was etched with worry. She had been checking her phone every 5 minutes for a text from the base, but there was nothing. "We don't have to go. We can just stay here, order a pizza, and watch a movie. Nobody would blame you." Lily shook her head. She looked at her reflection, seeing the dark circles under her eyes from a week of bad sleep. "If I don't go, it's like saying I was lying. I'm going for Mom. Even if she isn't there, I'm going to represent her." The drive to the school was silent. When they pulled up to the entrance, the valet line was full of SUVs and German sports cars. Lily stepped out into the rain, shielding her dress with a cheap umbrella. As she walked through the front doors, the noise of the crowd hit her like a wave. The ballroom was packed. Tables were draped in white linen, and a small stage had been set up at the far end, decorated with flags and a podium. Lily saw Chloe almost immediately. Chloe was wearing a shimmering gold dress that probably cost more than Lily's aunt made in a month. She was surrounded by a group of parents, laughing and pointing toward the entrance. When Chloe saw Lily, her eyes lit up with a predatory gleam. She whispered something to her father, a tall, imposing man in a sharp tuxedo, and they both began walking toward Lily. "Lily, you made it," Chloe said, her voice loud enough to turn heads. "I was starting to think you might have had a last-minute mission to attend to at home." "Where is she? Where's the legend?" Lily took a steadying breath. "She's not here yet. The weather is bad. Flights are delayed." Chloe's father looked down at Lily with a condescending smile. He checked his gold watch. "Well, the ceremony starts in 20 minutes. It's a shame. I was looking forward to hearing about her training. I've done some consulting for the Department of Defense, and I've never actually met a female member of that specific unit. They're quite rare. Almost mythical, one might say." The way he said mythical made it clear he didn't believe a word of it. A few other parents nearby drifted closer, eavesdropping on the conversation. The whispers started again, snaking through the crowd like smoke. "That's the girl," one mother whispered to another. "The one who said her mother is a seal. Such a strange thing to lie about, don't you think? It's so easily disproven." Lily walked away, finding her assigned seat at table 42. It was all the way in the back, near the kitchen doors. Her aunt sat beside her, squeezing her hand under the table. They were the only ones at the table. It felt like a deserted island in the middle of a sea of people who were all staring at them. The dinner service began, but Lily couldn't eat. Every time the heavy oak doors at the back of the hall opened, her heart jumped into her throat. Each time, it was just a waiter carrying a tray or a late-arriving couple. The minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness. On stage, the principal cleared his throat and tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for our annual Heritage Gala. Tonight we celebrate the legacies that build our community. We honor the leaders of industry, the creators of art, and, of course, our brave service members." The crowd applauded. Chloe's father was called up first to receive an award for his philanthropic leadership. He gave a long speech about the importance of truth, integrity, and setting an example for the next generation. He looked directly at Lily's table when he spoke about integrity. It felt like being put on trial in front of 300 people. As the speeches continued, the mockery at Lily's expense grew more bold. A group of boys at the neighboring table started folding their cloth napkins into paper airplanes and tossing them toward Lily. One landed in her lap. When she unfolded it, she saw the words SOS, Source of Stories, written in red ink. Lily felt a tear prick her eye, but she blinked it back. She reached into her pocket and gripped the coin. "Hold the line." And finally, the principal said, his tone turning a bit more formal, "We wanted to leave time for any family members currently serving to be recognized. We were told we might have a very special guest, tonight a member of the Naval Special Warfare community. Lily, is your mother with us?" The spotlight swung around, searching for table 42. It landed on Lily, bathing her in a harsh white glare. She felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff. She stood up slowly, her legs feeling like lead. The room was silent. 300 faces were turned toward her, waiting. Chloe was smirking, her phone held up to record the moment. "My mom," Lily started, her voice cracking. She cleared her throat and tried again. "My mom isn't here yet. She's still on her way." A loud snicker erupted from the front of the room. Then another. It wasn't just the kids anymore. Even some of the adults were shaking their heads. The principal looked embarrassed, coughing into his hand. "I see," the principal said, his voice dropping an octave. "Well, perhaps we should move on to the closing remarks. We appreciate the enthusiasm, Lily. Truly, she's not a liar." Lily's aunt stood up, her face red with anger. "She's been serving this country for 12 years while you all sit here eating steak. Please, let's keep it civil," Chloe's father called out from his seat, looking bored. "There's no need for a scene. We all know how hard it is to face reality sometimes." Lily felt the world closing in. The shame was a physical weight, crushing the air out of her lungs. She looked at the exit, ready to run, ready to disappear and never come back to this school again. The spotlight stayed on her, a cruel circle of light that felt like a cage. But then, the heavy oak doors at the back of the ballroom didn't just open. They shuddered. A dull thud echoed through the room, silencing the murmurs. It wasn't the sound of a waiter or a guest. It was the sound of something heavy hitting the wood. Then the doors swung wide with a crash, hitting the interior walls with a bang that sounded like a gunshot. The wind from the storm outside rushed into the warm room, bringing with it a spray of cold rain and the smell of the damp night. Every head in the ballroom snapped toward the back. The room went silent. Not the awkward silence from before, but a deep, heavy, breathless silence that felt like the air had been sucked out of the building. The draft of the storm outside didn't just bring rain. It brought a sudden, chilling reality into the room. For a few seconds, the only sound was the whistling of the wind through the open doorway. The wealthy parents and the smug students froze in their seats. Then, a figure stepped out of the darkness and into the golden light of the ballroom. It wasn't a woman in a fancy dress. It wasn't someone looking for a seat. It was a soldier who looked like she had just stepped off a battlefield and onto a movie set. Except there was nothing fake about the mud on her boots or the exhaustion in her eyes. Lily's mother stood there in her full dress blue uniform. The fabric was crisp, but you could see the dampness from the rain on her shoulders. Across her chest was a row of ribbons and medals that caught the light, including the distinctive golden trident, the mark of a Navy SEAL. She didn't look like the other parents in the room. Her posture was straight as a spear, and her eyes didn't wander. They were fixed, intense, and sharp. She wasn't alone. Two other men in similar uniforms stood slightly behind her, one on each side. They didn't move. They just stood like statues, their presence radiating a kind of quiet power that made the chatter in the room vanish instantly. The principal, who had been mid-sentence, stood with his mouth open. Chloe's father, who had been leaning back in his chair with a smug grin, slowly sat upright, his face turning a strange shade of pale gray. Chloe herself had dropped her phone. It hit the carpeted floor with a soft thud. But she didn't even reach for it. Lily's mother didn't say anything at first. She scanned the room, her gaze passing over the tables of staring people. When her eyes landed on the back of the room, on the tiny table where Lily was standing in the harsh spotlight, her expression softened for just a fraction of a second. She began to walk. The sound of her boots on the hardwood floor was rhythmic and loud. Clack, clack, clack. It was the only sound in the entire building. People actually leaned back as she passed, as if they were afraid to get too close to the energy she brought with her. She walked past Chloe's table. Chloe's father tried to clear his throat, perhaps to say something or offer a greeting. But as Lily's mother glanced at him, the words seemed to die in his throat. There was something in her look, a mixture of discipline and absolute authority, that made his corporate success seem very small and very unimportant. Lily felt like she was dreaming. She stayed rooted to the spot, her hand still gripping the coin in her pocket. She wanted to run to her mom, but she was overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the moment. Her mom looked like a giant, even though she wasn't particularly tall. She looked like a force of nature. The woman reached the stage. She didn't wait for an invitation. She walked up the stairs, and the principal practically fell over himself to get out of her way, nearly tripping over a decorative plant. She stepped up to the podium and adjusted the microphone. The screech of the audio feedback made everyone flinch, but she didn't blink. "I apologize for the entrance," she said. Her voice was low, gravelly, and carried to the back of the room without her even trying. "My team and I had some trouble with the weather, and our transport was redirected. I'm told I missed the portion of the evening where we discuss legacy and integrity." She paused, her eyes locking onto Chloe's father in the front row. "I heard a few words on my way in, something about mythical units and stolen valor." The silence in the room was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. Chloe's father looked like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole. He stared at his steak, unable to look up. "My name is Commander Elenea, but most people just call me Ma'am," he continued, though she didn't use her last name for security reasons. I've spent the last 6 months in a place where the only thing that matters is the person standing next to you. In my world, we don't talk about what we do. We don't brag. We don't have to. Because when the door bursts open, everyone knows exactly who we are. She turned her head toward Lily. I have a daughter who has had to grow up faster than any child should. She has had to spend her nights wondering if I'm okay, while her peers mocked her for telling the truth. She has more integrity in her pinky finger than this entire room has in its collective bank accounts. Lily's aunt was crying quietly now, her hand over her mouth. Lily felt a surge of pride so strong it made her chest ache. The shame that had been suffocating her just 5 minutes ago was gone, replaced by a feeling of absolute victory. The commander looked back at the crowd. I didn't come here for an award. I didn't come here to be honored by people who don't understand the cost of the freedom they enjoy. I came here for my daughter. She stepped away from the podium and walked off the stage. She didn't wait for applause, and none came because the audience was too stunned to move. She walked straight to table 42. As she reached Lily, she didn't say anything about the bullies or the school. She just reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind Lily's ear. You held the line, kiddo, she whispered, her voice finally losing its hard, military edge. I'm so proud of you. Lily finally broke. She threw her arms around her mother's neck, burying her face in the thick fabric of the uniform. It smelled like jet fuel, rain, and home. The two soldiers who had come with her stood guard at the ends of the table, their arms crossed, looking out at the room with stony expressions. They were like a wall of iron between Lily and the rest of the world. The important parents at the other tables began to whisper. But it was different now. It wasn't mocking. It was hushed, respectful, and filled with a deep sense of embarrassment. They had spent the week laughing at a girl whose mother was out doing things they couldn't even imagine in their worst nightmares. Chloe sat at her gold-draped table, looking smaller than she ever had. She looked at her father, hoping he would say something to fix the situation, but he just kept his head down, fiddling with his wedding ring. The power dynamic of the school had been demolished in a single minute. The silence in the ballroom didn't break for a long time. It lingered, heavy and thick, as Lily stayed wrapped in her mother's arms. The two soldiers who had accompanied her mother didn't move. They stood like granite pillars, their eyes scanning the room with a calm, professional intensity that made every adult in the room feel like a child. Finally, the commander pulled back just enough to look Lily in the eye. She reached out and touched the small silver coin Lily was holding. "You kept it," she whispered. "I knew you would." Lily nodded, her eyes bright with tears she no longer felt the need to hide. "I kept it every day. I didn't let go." Her mother smiled, a real, weary smile, and then turned to face the room. She didn't look for an apology. She didn't wait for an apology. She didn't wait for the principal to find his voice. She simply signaled to her team. "We're leaving," she said. As they walked toward the exit, the crowd parted like the Red Sea. People stood up instinctively. Some tried to offer a handshake. Others just lowered their heads in a strange sort of shame. When they reached the back of the room, Lily saw Chloe standing near the doors. The girl who had spent the entire week making Lily's life a living nightmare looked completely hollow. Her face was pale, and her eyes were fixed on the floor. Lily paused for a second. She didn't say anything mean. She didn't gloat. She just looked at Chloe, then at her mother, and finally back at Chloe. The look was enough. It was the look of someone who knew exactly who they were and no longer cared what a bully thought. Outside, the rain had slowed to a light drizzle. A dark, unmarked SUV was idling at the curb, its headlights cutting through the mist. One of the soldiers opened the door for them. "Where are we going?" Lily asked, as she slid into the back seat, sitting between her aunt and her mother. Home, her mother said, leaning her head back against the seat. Just home. I've got 72 hours before I have to report for a debrief. I plan on spending every second of it eating your aunt's cooking and sleeping in a bed that doesn't move. The car pulled away, leaving the lights of St. Leaving in a bed that doesn't move. Jude's Academy behind. For the first time in years, Lily felt like she could breathe. Monday morning was different. When Lily's aunt dropped her off at the school gates, Lily felt a familiar flutter of nerves. But it wasn't fear. It was just anticipation. She walked through the front doors, and the change was immediate. The hallway, which usually felt like a gauntlet of whispers and judgment, was unnervingly quiet. She walked toward her locker. As she approached, she saw a group of students standing nearby. Justin, the boy who had mocked her about breathing underwater, looked up and quickly looked away. He stepped aside to give her a wide path, his usual swagger completely gone. When Lily opened her locker, she found a small, handwritten note tucked into the vents. It wasn't a drawing of a stick figure or a joke about G.I. Jane. It was a simple piece of notebook paper that said, "I'm sorry, we were wrong." It wasn't signed, but Lily recognized the handwriting as one of the girls who sat at Chloe's lunch table. In history class, Mr. Henderson was already at the board. When Lily walked in, he stopped talking. He stood there for a moment, then gave her a small, respectful nod. He didn't make a big speech. He didn't try to apologize for not standing up for her earlier. He just said, "Welcome back, Lily. Please, take your seat." The most significant change, however, was Chloe. Chloe didn't show up for first period. She didn't show up for lunch either. When she finally appeared in the hallway during the afternoon break, she was alone. The court of followers she usually traveled with was nowhere to be seen. It turns out that when a bully's power is built on a foundation of lies and arrogance, it only takes one moment of pure truth to make the whole thing crumble. Chloe's father had reportedly been deeply embarrassed by the incident, and the video of the commander's entry had already circulated through the parent groups. The family's reputation for being untouchable was over. Lily sat at her usual table in the cafeteria. She expected to be alone, and she was okay with that. But a few minutes into her lunch, a girl she had barely ever spoken to, a quiet girl named Mia, who played in the school orchestra, sat down across from her. "Hey," Mia said shyly, "is it okay if I sit here?" Lily smiled. "Yeah, it's definitely okay." Slowly, over the next few days, the social hierarchy of the school began to shift. It wasn't that Lily became the most popular girl overnight. She didn't want that anyway. It was that the atmosphere of fear and mocking had been replaced by a quiet respect. People stopped caring so much about whose father was a CEO and started paying attention to who was actually kind. Lily's mother stayed for the full 72 hours. They spent the time exactly as they had planned, watching old movies, talking about everything and nothing, and just being a family. When the time came for her mother to leave again, the goodbye was still hard, but it was different. They stood on the porch in the early morning light. Her mother was back in her work gear, her bag packed and slung over her shoulder. "You're going to be okay here?" her mother asked, looking toward the school bus that was rumbling down the street. "I'm more than okay, Mom," Lily said. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the challenge coin, showing it to her one last time. "I know how to hold the line now." Her mother hugged her tight, a quick, firm embrace that carried all the love and strength in the world. "I'll be back before you know it. Keep your head up." Lily watched the SUV drive away until its taillights disappeared around the corner. She turned and walked toward the bus stop. As she stepped onto the bus, she didn't look at the floor. She didn't put her headphones in to drown out the world. She sat down and looked out the window, watching the town wake up. She knew that life would still be hard sometimes. She knew there would be more deployments and more long nights of waiting for a phone call. But she also knew that the truth didn't need to be loud to be powerful. It just needed to be held onto. As the bus pulled up to St. Jude's, Lily stepped off with her shoulders back and her chin up. She wasn't just a scholarship kid anymore. She wasn't the poor girl or the girl who told stories. She was the daughter of a warrior, and she had a legacy of her own to build.